Times reports that an increased and highly visible police presence will be on hand for Shapiro's speech, as well as a closed perimeter around the building where the speech will be delivered. In a memo posted to the university's website, Berkeley Provost Paul Alivisatos, I think, wrote, without any irony, "We are deeply concerned about the impact some speakers may have on individuals' sense of safety and belonging. No one should be made to feel threatened or harassed simply because of who they are or what they believe." Except Ben Shapiro, apparently. Counseling services are also being made available to students and faculty members who are upset by Shapiro's speech. That is not sarcasm, that is truth. That's actually happening. Joining us now is editor-in-chief of the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro. Ben, just so you know, we've set up a closed perimeter around CNN in case people feel threatened by your interview here tonight.
I'm excited. I've been working out, and I'll just tell you, I'm a very physically intimidating character.
All right, so this isn't your first go at one of these. Do you think that your reception at college campuses has gotten worse since Trump, though?
Yes. I think that over the last 2 years, it's gotten worse generally, even before Trump was nominated. I mean, there was nearly a riot when I spoke at Cal State Los Angeles in February 2016. But I think that it has accelerated since Trump was elected. I think that Antifa particularly has gotten very, very active. I don't want to blame all the students at Berkeley for this, because I don't think it's most of the students at Berkeley. I think that it's Antifa, which is an outside essentially terror group that engages in political violence, and the city has largely been willing to go along with that. This is the first time that the city of Berkeley is supposedly going to stand up to it. We'll see if they fulfill their promises.
Why are people so afraid of you?
I don't know. I mean, I seem like a nice guy. I assume I assume because I'm conservative and because I say some things that people find offensive. But I don't consider myself a provocateur. I'm not somebody who goes on campus and just says things to get a rise out of people. I go and I try to make a logical case for the positions that I support, and then if people get ticked off at it, that's really their problem. I think it has less to do with me, though, than it has to do with this newfound perception on the left that if you are someone who disagrees, then you're insulting their very identity. It's this intersectional theory that says that if I say something that you don't like and you happen to be black, it's because you're black that you don't like it, and therefore I'm insulting you because you're black, even though that makes no sense at all. And unfortunately, I think that that's what you're seeing from Berkeley when they say they're going to have counselors on hand for this sort of thing. Honestly, if you need counselors for me speaking, you need psychiatric care anyway.
I am not trying to. I'm not trying to belittle this, but it is ridiculous. Ben, stay right there. I want to bring the table in. You know, I used to say that Donald Trump, in part, got elected because political correctness rose to such an absurd level that he said, okay, y'all, if you're telling me that we live in a world where everything could be considered offensive, I'm going to create one where nothing will be considered offensive. And I will literally get away with saying anything. And he proved that entirely right. Yeah. But do you think we've already hit peak PC, or is this just going to get worse?
Well, can I? Yeah. There's obviously a PC discussion here. And just for the record, I want to disagree with Mr. Shapiro about Antifa being a terrorist group, but that's not the main point.
Okay.
Though I think they are violent. Anyway.
Well, that's not actually under debate.
Right, yeah. Exactly, right. No, fair.
Using violence
exactly makes you violent.
To advance political ends is pretty much the very definition of terrorism.
But she doesn't want to have that argument, actually.
I'm going to counseling after the segment.
Right, exactly. I've offended everyone. You know, I just want to say, you know, maybe there's a PC issue in it, but I think it just speaks to a deeper misunderstanding about what the First Amendment means. I mean, I don't want to preach...
A misunderstanding by liberals.
By everyone to some degree.
Definitely not by everyone.
Well, no, but wait, let me. So I want to be clear, as you know, a Democrat, a former Speaker of the New York City Council, as a Democrat, this isn't okay. And we've seen this happen in New York at Brooklyn College when groups with different perspectives on Israel wanted to speak. Right. They were pushed out by the college. So this isn't just even a conservative liberal conversation.
What's so concerning to me is the fact that college campuses nowadays that say they want to be a great melting pot, that they want to be a place that's tolerant of all people, have become completely intolerant to any viewpoint they disagree with. And what the left has learned is if you threaten violence, and I think young liberals are learning that violence is somehow this acceptable way to go after people, including Ben Shapiro. I've known Ben for a long time. Ben and I have spoken at events together. The hostility towards conservatives on college campuses across the board now is a point where it is becoming unsafe because the left has said, we don't like you and we're going to silence you at all costs.
But I just want to say, it's not just the issue
Name
of
a
the left.
conservative that's gone after liberals on any college campus and had to have extra, not only counseling, but a perimeter set up. It doesn't happen.
Guys, I want to get back to Ben, though. I want to get back to Ben real quick, and we'll come back to that. Ben, I know you've written a lot about the irony of liberal institutions curbing speech. So have I. What lesson do you think a student learns about the world when he's told he can only speak freely in like a free speech zone on a college campus?
Well, I think that it creates, obviously, a generation of people who are very delicate. And I'm not the only one who says this. Jonathan Haidt, who's a social psychologist over at New York University, says the same thing about the microaggression culture. This idea that if you're offended, then you have a right to be protected from offense. This creates a generation of unhealthy people who are actually looking to be offended because there's virtue in victimhood. And this is scary stuff. That I think is actually the bigger problem than just Antifa getting violent in particular areas, is this generalized theory of life that's being taught that you're so delicate that if somebody disagrees with you, they deserve to be curbed. It's a sort of aggression. It's a microaggression requiring some sort of action to protect you.
And,
hang on.
Go ahead,
Andy.
Because the thing is, to me, it's even worse than that. Because apparently what's going on here is Ben is terrifying people who are not even going to go hear him speak. So they're not even hearing what he's saying, but somehow he's terrifying them. Someone has to explain the world to me, because that makes no sense.
Look, there is no question that the perspective of many college campuses, right, that everybody who speaks in disagreement with what they believe is the majority voice on the campus has to be controlled and put to the side. I don't think that's a good thing, but what I also think is really important is that this speaks to an erosion of one of the fundamental issues that this country was created on. And to boil it down and say the left have all the responsibility, the right have, the right have all the responsibility, or for me to say the obvious, decreases the conversation to pure politics. And to really get this, it needs to be a higher.
You have to look at one thing, though.
I've been a conservative on a college campus. Many. It is political. Ben, I just want to get your thoughts on a news item before we go. You resigned as Breitbart's editor-in-chief in 2016. Steve Bannon's back at the site. Do you think he's more influential in the media, or was he in the White House?
I don't think he's particularly influential in either. I mean, I think he's much more influential in the media than he was in the White House. I think by the time he left the White House, he'd been a pretty marginalized figure. In the media, Breitbart's a big site, so he has some weight there, obviously. But the attempt by the media to build him into some sort of philosopher king of the Trump administration who's going to unlock the key to how this thing works, no. I mean, no. By the end of the time in the administration, he was sitting in a room by himself with a whiteboard full of things that had not been fulfilled. So I'm just wondering where the media, I'm just wondering where the media gets off trying to turn him into something he's not. It's bizarre.
Amazing. Ben Shapiro, thank you. Good luck.
Reaction, you think Shapiro was the third hurricane to hit the United States in the past month. The actual LA Times headline on this quote, Berkeley braces for right-wing talk show host Ben Shapiro's visit. They're lashing themselves to the mast. Dinesh D'Souza has called Shapiro Hurricane Ben. Christina Hoff Sommers tweeted this, Category 5 hurricane about to strike Berkeley. Evacuators seek shelter now. Well, the school, for its part, has already announced free counseling services for traumatized students. Can you imagine going to those? Leave your self-respect at the door. Harmeet Dillon is an RNC National Committee woman from California and a very sensible person, and she joins us tonight. Harmeet, I saw Robbie George, the eminent Princeton professor, said yesterday, I think I'm quoting, I would sooner shut down a university than authorize counseling for students to deal with opinions they don't agree with. I mean, does anyone at Berkeley think, well, we're becoming parodies?
Well, I wish they would. I mean, as you may know, Tucker, I sued the university last spring for refusing to allow 3 different conservative speakers to speak at the invitation of my clients, the Berkeley College Republicans. So, you know, even the dean of the Berkeley Law School came out last week and said that when Berkeley doesn't allow free access to its facilities, it's violating the First Amendment. So you would think that they would have learned now, having been sued, be a little bit more self-aware, but this has been a decades-long process of coddling these students and engaging in this leftist groupthink and orthodoxy, and so they just don't get how crazy it looks to the rest of the world.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if you're not from California, maybe our viewers don't understand, Cal Berkeley is a big deal, or was. My grandmother went there in the 30s. It was considered something you bragged about. It was a very serious place, and I think on the science side it still probably is. What kind of damage is it doing to the reputation of the university, this kind of lunacy?
It's serious. I mean, there are, as you said, Tucker, multiple Nobel laureates from Berkeley. Berkeley is noted to be the birthplace of the free speech movement in the United States. And yet, you know, parents got to be looking at this. And the out-of-state tuition at Berkeley is $66,000. So if you're looking at that, you know, it's going to be self-selecting kind of snowflake types gravitating to Berkeley, and, you know, the puppies and the group hugs and the counseling and the trust falls and all this crazy stuff. It doesn't really equip the students to deal with the real world, where, yes, we have different ideas, clashes. People like Ben Shapiro will appear in your workplace and you'll have to deal with it. They're not doing students any favors here.
Ben Shapiro, I mean, Ben Shapiro is not an inherently scary guy, as far as I can tell. So do you think, I mean, but there is a scary element to this, and that's the reaction from the left to speakers they disagree with. And we've seen a lot of violence at Berkeley recently. And I know you've been right in the middle of some of this stuff, trying to make sure that the police protect the right of people to exercise their First Amendment prerogatives, without which they're meaningless. Are you confident the cops will do that this time, that they will actually protect people?
Well, you know, stepping back for a second, Ben came to speak in my town, San Francisco, across the bay a couple of months ago. 300 people came to see him talk. No riots, no craziness, no arrests, nothing, no protesters. So all this mass hysteria at Berkeley is really being whipped up both by the Antifa, but also being enabled by the university, and frankly by the vacuum of police authority. So on multiple incidents so far this year, we've seen the police in Berkeley and the campus police step back, stand down, and allow rioters, Antifa, really criminals and domestic terrorists, to overrun the city, terrorize people, break into shops, and generally scare normal citizens away from going to this event. I mean, I have friends who are scared to go to this event on Thursday at Berkeley.
So when things like this happened 50 years ago, a succession of administrations sent in federal troops, whether it was to Little Rock or Oxford, Mississippi. They basically said your constitutional rights cannot be violated. I don't care what your local leaders say. We're going to protect your rights as enumerated in the Bill of Rights. Is there a place for that here, do you think?
I hope not yet, Tucker, but I'll be there on the ground, as will other lawyers from my law firm, and, you know, lots of witnesses. The national news media will be there to see how Berkeley reacts. I think they've gotten the message through the lawsuit that what they've been doing in terms of suppressing conservative speech is illegal. But the police are also at risk here, because if they allow protesters selectively to suppress a certain viewpoint, that's a First Amendment violation as well.
Right.
And the university has cracked down on this event. So I'll give you an example. This is at Zellerbach Hall, the big hall that holds 2,000 people. Sonia Sotomayor was allowed to speak there with the full hall of 2,000 people. Bernie Sanders was allowed to speak there last year with a full hall of 2,000 people. Yet Ben Shapiro is such a threat to the you know, common good of UC Berkeley that they're only allowing the hall to be halfway filled. They're also shutting down half the campus around the auditorium, and they're offering this counseling. I mean, they're hyping it.
Yeah. Well, I think we're having technical difficulties. Harmeet Dillon, thanks a lot.